Well, when John Herdman was introduced as Toronto FC's new head coach, the first questions were all about Canada soccer. He's not going to shed that title too quickly, at least philosophically. So, he was asked out of the gates as well. One of the reasons why he left was because of disharmony in the locker room. And if he had lost some of the confidence and if he had lost some of the ear of the players in the room. And this is what John Herdman had to say to that.
Yeah, I mean, I've got great memories with that team. I think you go through highs and lows as every coach does. It's been a challenging experience and time with that group for reasons a lot out of their control, potentially even out of the control of the coaching team. A lot of impacts that you deal with that have got nothing to do with X's and O's or positional selections or unit relationships or even coach-player relationships. There's been a lot of, I'd say, noise that you've had to deal with. And I think with all of those elements, that's where this team are at currently, coming out at the back of a World Cup with, labour disputes and, deals that are, individuals with deals that, challenge the culture. It's not been easy. There's no doubt.
Things that make you go, Ollie, what do you think? Well,
Hmm.
other than the labor dispute, which is pretty obvious what he's talking about there, individual deals. I mean, because here's the thing, right? Again, elephant in the room. There have been reports that there was a rift forming between him and Alphonso Davies. That's a star player right there. That's a guy who's going to be part of this national team for many years to come. What are your reactions to what he just had to say there, Ollie?
Well, based on what he said there and what he said in a couple of other interviews I've seen as well, Herdman doesn't seem to be denying that there has been, I don't know if rift is the right words, but some kind of conflict and challenges to the culture was the way he phrased it there within that locker room. What he seems to dispute is that he was the cause of it or relationships directly with him, in terms of the way he was coaching, tactical decisions he made, that was the issue. And what he pointed to there, and I thought it was quite, a very specific thing to say, was individuals with deals who challenged the culture. Now, whether he intended it or not, anyone who listens to that, who has any knowledge of the Canadian men's national team, is immediately going to think Alphonso Davies, because we've heard the reporting about the separate deal that Davies did in terms of royalties from jersey sales. We've heard about the conflict between, Davies has his own deal with BMO, and then Canada Soccer obviously have a deal with a rival bank in CIBC and issues that's created. So whether he meant it or not, that is immediately gonna draw people to Davies, fairly or unfairly. And that's something obviously that's interesting, just in terms of the relationship between the two of them, and the relationship with any head coach going forwards. What is also interesting in Herdman mentioning that is that he is now going to a team in a league in Major League Soccer where the discrepancy between what the top player earns and what the guy on the minimum salary earns is the biggest in the world, right? And especially at CFC with Lorenzo Insigne earning 15 million and other guys earning 70K. So that you would think would have some pretty interesting implications in terms of the culture that John Herdman likes to build in any team.
Do you feel like he meant to say that, or he might have accidentally let it slip? Because Ollie, you and I were there at the press conference. Like, we've known John for a long time. We've been in the room with lots of press conference. He has a knack for saying the right thing. He's so good at that. But he seemed a little bit more safe, guarded, a little bit nervous than usual. Did you feel that, Ollie? Maybe a little bit, or is that just me?
I thought generally he was trying quite hard not to take shots at people he's leaving behind now, and that was the one thing where, again, I don't know if he intended it that way, but it could be construed as a little bit of a shot.
Yeah, it came out that way, and when you heard it, you're like, "Ooh, like, whoops." That was my reaction, because there's only one player with an individual deal that stands out more than everything else. So I think that he would probably want that comment back if he had a redo here. But it certainly signals what what was going on behind the scenes. It's the labor dispute. These things aren't easy, but individual agendas are something that every manager needs to deal with. This happens with national teams. It happens with club teams. So, the brotherhood is fine. The cultural elements are great, and it brings players together. But inevitably, individual agendas, and that's not even a bad thing, and priorities and individuals trying to take the next steps, like this comes into the play. This is professional sports, right? So none of this should surprise, and it's something that Ollie accurately says he's going to continue to have to deal with.
What does he want to take back more? Maybe that comment or the Croatia comment? But here's the thing. If he said it, whether he meant to say it or not, he felt it, right? He clearly felt it. And whether that's right or wrong, it just is what is, right? He felt like maybe that kind of interfered in things. Personal development for him, Canada Soccer, you remember he took over the women 2012 and the great things that he did there before taking over the men in 2018. He's been there a long time. Here was his comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, for the first month, part of the transition out of Canada Soccer, that's a really important part of, putting it down better than you found it. And I certainly know when I entered the men's program, there was some things that needed to have been left behind. And there's a group of staff that'll be working for the next 3 weeks alongside Mauro Biello to ensure that, he has what he needs, and the organizational knowledge is located, organized in ways that people can use it to the best of their abilities. So there's a period of time where, we'll be handing over at Canada Soccer. Things have moved very quickly there. And at the same time, a little bit of, personal development for myself. I've got some things targeted that'll help put me in a stronger position moving into this role. And then with Terry, Terry will be, leading the team until, the moment that I'll put my hands on that wheel towards the end of the season. And he's been a great custodian. I think he's built some great relationships in the locker room, and I'll be relying on that. Those experiences had. He was part of that Qatar staff and a big part of the lead into the World Cup qualifying as well. So, Terry will be part of the TSC first team staff moving forward, and really looking forward to working with him and the many others that are going to be part of that team.
All right. Okay. What are your thoughts on that? Wheels?
This October 1st date is just so bizarre to me. It's just very weird, like taking time for personal development right now, because typically when someone takes over a new job, they want to jump in right away. Like, okay, let's go. Right. Like let's hit the ground. Let's hit the ground running. And there's over a month until he actually takes over with 3 games to go. Just one home game left. I just question why, what this personal development at this point actually is. What does that require? If you had something previously planned, doesn't that kind of go out the window? When you get a new job and a big job on his hands? Same thing, this transition for Canada Soccer. Do you need 5 weeks, 3 weeks to, come on, someone else is going to come in with their own thoughts. Mauro Biello's been around the staff for a long time. So is he waiting for something to happen at the club? I question like what this means at the club in terms of other changes that are going to be made. From what I sense, there's a lot of people in the dark for what this means right now. John Herdman is a team builder. He's going to be keen on bringing in his own people to run the club his own way. And oftentimes that takes time. Is he waiting to see if different players perhaps move on over the course of the next month? It's just very bizarre. You don't typically see this. You see managers either step in right away or perhaps wait until the next campaign. But, taking a month and coming in for the final 3 games, it's so bizarre to me because you don't typically see it.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's definitely unusual. Herdman is, he's never done things by the book or by the same book as most coaches, at least. And so, in that sense, maybe it's a bit less surprising. I do think it's interesting, and I'll give him some credit on this front that there is going to be a handover happening with the Canadian men's national team. I think he mentioned it there. That didn't really happen when Octavio Zambrano left the program. I thought Zambrano did a decent job as Canada coach, but there were people within the federation who I think felt it was a bit of a mess, in terms of what was then given for Herdman to inherit. And that's something I think that probably needs to change going forwards, is that, it probably is necessary for Herdman to take a few weeks here to properly transfer the organizational knowledge, was the phrase he used there, to whoever's coming in next, because quite frankly, all of that right now is John Herdman, right? It's not in like a technical director or, executives in the organization really who kind of take responsibility for that and can handle that transition. Probably the CSA does benefit from having Herdman take a few weeks here in order to do that. So that's something that I would probably be looking to change going forwards, but maybe not the worst thing in the world for Canada to manage this transition.
I will just also say very quickly from a TFC perspective, remember this is a business. Ticket prices are very expensive to go to Toronto FC games. This is season ticket renewal time. Perhaps the timing of making sure that this Herdman announcement was made when it was could be calculated. You're mired in a long losing streak. You want to get some people on side. He did a team talk in something they called the Tunnel Club underneath for season ticket holders last night, and people were blown away. Like there was a buzz. John is excellent at that. You want to hear what he has to say. He excites you. And with the team so happy to winning last night, that's a good combination. So this will not hurt the business side of Toronto FC one bit. It's actually going to be a big thing.
I think everyone, like not just the fans, like the players as well, everyone needed a bit of hope and to see the light at the end of the tunnel here.
Okay, but guys, the elephant in the room, which I seem to think is the theme of this show, elephant in the room, is how Herdman, that just sounds like a whoopee cushion. How is Herdman going to deal with the Italians? I mean, these are guys that he needs to get healthy, I feel like, first and foremost as well. They seem to always be injured. He needs to get them on the same page. He needs to get them cooperating with each other, with the team. And this is something that he was asked about, as well. When it comes to rebuilding, what you going to do about the Italians?
I think there's an evaluation through this period of time. I mean, I think those players are massive parts of the TFC picture. That's a process that I'll be evaluating through my tenure. I've got Jason Hernandez, who's had some deep experiences with these players as well. That'll be helping guiding what that roster will look like in the new season. But for me, it's a process now of really going towards understanding the antecedents behind the performances as we've seen, and ultimately, the motivations of every player here, and to find out how committed people are to taking this club to the next level, because that's the demand, that's the expectation.
Got to find out the commitment. Where are they? Bernadeschi. So if we're going to go by facts, right? Like Insigne has publicly, even when it came down to Bob Bradley, said, nah, things are great. Love the coach. Bernadeschi was the one who was very vocal about not liking him, feeling like the team was not prepared, not having structure. And then we know the big article that came out in The Athletic as well, highlighting a lot of the dysfunction behind the scenes. So, where are we, with those two Italians, and where do you feel, Ollie, John Herdman is in being able to rein them in? Because when we talk about him being this great motivational speaker, oftentimes that is with guys who are younger, who perhaps maybe are a little bit, inexperienced, and they love that type of coach. These are guys who have played in Europe, European champions. Do you maybe need a different approach with them?
Yeah, it's the big question, particularly with Insigne. I wouldn't say it was, a ringing endorsement there of I can't wait to work with these guys, and they're definitely a part of my plans and a part of the future. When you say there's going to be an evaluation there, clearly it's kind of sounded like you're on the fence a little bit as to whether their future is with the team or not. He said that the question will be, do they have the right, or does any player have the right level of commitment to want to take this club forwards and be part of the solution here? And I think my question is, and again, it relates to Insigne in particular because of that big salary. What happens if the answer is no? Does John Herdman, is he going to be empowered to tell Jason Hernandez and Bill Manning, this guy isn't part of my plans, go and find a solution? if that is the case, can they find a solution? Can they find someone who's willing to, pay Lorenzo Insigne an amount of money that would persuade him to leave Toronto FC? And if not, what are the consequences of that? And how much of a challenge is it going to be for John Herdman to build the team and the culture that he wants around these players who seems to have struggled to really lead that in the way that TFC fans would have hoped and expected, and Bob Bradley hoped and expected during his time in charge. So it's the single biggest question as far as Herdman's success or failure with TFC is concerned, I think, is the future of these two players, but the one on 15 million in particular.
I don't think both of them come back to Toronto FC next year. That's just a guess. I'm oftentimes wrong. I might be proven wrong. But if I was to make a wager of who would be on their way out, I think it would be Bernardeschi. Because even if you had to eat a little bit of money to make it happen, I think it's a much more movable contract than $50-60 million of Lorenzo Insigne. That's just a dollars and cents type thing. If you can get rid of one, can you get rid of two? And what are the desires of the players right now as well? I do think there's a world where one, both, or either can still be an effective player in this league. You watch them play; it's no shortage of talent.
Sure.
But the setup around them and the motivation and just their head and their heart and just everything needs to get right. But that also requires, Andy, this for me goes much deeper than just those two players. There's going to be an attempted entire squad reconstruction here. I was looking last night just at the squad list of players. How many players in that team provide you value for what their cap figure actually shows you? Like, how many players would you sign that exact same contract to and have them on your team, on a winning Toronto FC team, if you can do it all over again? 2, 3? Like, how many players are actually producing and are worth what they're getting paid? The answer, not many. Not many at all. And that is a problem when you're constructing a squad. So it goes well beyond just those two players. This squad needs a massive overhaul.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I wonder at what point Toronto FC, MLSC, in order to move Bernardeschi, just has to accept that they might have to eat some of that salary, because it's no secret they've been trying to move him, but they want another club to completely swallow that up. And that hasn't been happening. And Bernardeschi ain't moving unless he gets all his money. Guys, this is like the Josie Altidore situation all over again. So at some point, if John Herdman, being as persuasive as he can tell Bill Manning, listen, you got to eat a little bit of that money because we got to get rid of him, then I don't think it's easier said than done, because these guys ain't going anywhere unless they're getting paid in full. And they're not going to go to any other club that's going to pay them any less of that. So MLSE might have to eat that if they can't find a way to move them. But here's the thing. Let's just move on to some MLS action, because Toronto FC does pick up their first win in 13 games. Their first win since May. They beat the Philadelphia Union 3-1, which keep this. I'm going to plant the seed now, gentlemen. It's something just to have a conversation with in the future. And I'm not saying get rid of the competition. It was entertaining. But you do wonder the toll that Leagues Cup has on teams that go pretty far in the tournament and then boom, got to get right back into MLS action. Anyways, that's just food for thought.